Hey folks, David Stewart here. I want to talk a little bit about this lady right here, Scarlett Johansson. She's making news because she quit an acting job. And the job was for a movie called Rub and Tug, in which she would play a trans man, that is a woman transitioning to live as a man, who runs a series of massage parlors that engage in acts of prostitution. Now, she quit this movie not because it's rather lurid, but because of public backlash from the trans community over the fact that she's not trans, that she's a woman playing a trans man. I wanted to talk about this a little bit because there's some fun things, I guess, to explore about this entire schizophrenic mess of public outcry. First one is I actually think Scarlett Johansson would be good as a trans man, and that's mostly because of her voice. She has kind of this low, scratchy voice, and to me it sounds rather mannish. So I could really imagine her in a role where she's playing a trans man who hasn't been taking years and years of hormones to be highly masculinized, have the lower voice, have a beard, and things like that. So I could really imagine her in that role, similar to Hilary Swank in Boys Don't Cry, which is now a rather old movie, which people didn't have the outcry about this back then, but they're having it for this particular movie, since the actress doesn't match the role. She doesn't have the same identity as the person in the role. That seems to be the objection. So I think she'd be good. That's not why she's quitting the part, because she doesn't think she'd do a good job, but because of a very vocal minority. And I think this is a case of minority rules that, especially if I was her, I wouldn't want to put up with it. It'd be like, you know what? It's not worth the money. It's not worth the trouble to be dragged through the mud and attacked constantly on social media day in and day out for taking an acting role that I thought would be interesting and might make me a few dollars. So if I were her, yeah, I'd probably just do that. I'd probably quietly quit, not make she made a big statement about trans individuals or something to try to make up for it. Probably wouldn't apologize or make any statement. I'd just quietly quit because it's not really worth the trouble. You know, it's like, fine, you can crucify someone else for it. Now, the funny thing is, if you view this as an opportunity to have a story about trans men out in the public and have them consider it and think about it and have exposure for your agenda, this is an interesting movie to pick for that reason, because it's about a trans man engaged in the prostitution business. And there's already a lot of stereotypes around trans individuals being prostitutes and sex workers and in porn and things like that. So it's an interesting choice to think that this is going to be the movie that shows the public what trans individuals are really like, or, you know, it's a good opportunity to have exposure for the idea of transsexualism or transgenderism. The other thing is, they're actively, if they believe that that's an opportunity, they're actively working against it by having Scarlett Johansson not be in the film. Okay, if she's not in the film, the movie's going to make less money and less people are going to see it. Actors and actresses are not hired just because they're good at acting. They're hired because, from the studio's perspective, it's an investment, just like any kind of talent hire is an investment. And if you put a big name actor or actress on your movie poster, you put them in the movie, people will go see that movie simply because that actor or actress is involved in the project. A Brad Pitt can command multiple millions of dollars for a movie because people will go see the movie simply to watch him in it. Same thing with Johnny Depp, probably Scarlett Johansson for lots of people. So if you have her out of the movie, then you're reducing the exposure of the movie, which means you're not getting that movie in front of a lot of people to have them consider your perspective or your agenda, whatever it is. And, you know, the movie's going to be less profitable, which means there's going to be less opportunities in the future for roles that are trans and things like that. The next thing that's a little bit schizophrenic is the objection to an actor has to have the same identity as the part they're playing. That's never really been something that's been enforced in Hollywood or on stage really ever. And trying to enforce it on trans, like being a trans man, which is an extremely tiny percentage of the population, seems a little bit absurd. But there's even a level below that, which is that you're objecting to a woman taking on the role of, you can put it this way, a woman taking on the role of a woman taking on the role of a man. right? A woman acting like a woman taking on the role of a man. That it's not that different from a woman deciding to transition early to a man in terms of like the physical appearance, and it's an acting thing, right? And if this is a problem, where do you draw the line? Because we had Incredibles, right? You have Brad Bird, who does the voice of Edna Mode, who's a female character. Should that not be allowed because you have a man playing a woman? Should women not be allowed to play male castrati parts in operas? Should we draw the line there? No. You have to have a castrati play the role of a castrati. You cannot have, a woman just playing a castrati. That's not fair. You have women doing the voices of men all the time. You have men playing the part of women. What about drag queens? Like the entire mess starts to become unraveled when you're requiring every identity match every role. The point of acting is that you're taking on the role of something that isn't you. That's what acting is all about. So you have actors who play gay characters and they're not gay in real life. Should that not be allowed? Because that's just pretending to be somebody else and trying to represent somebody else's perspective, some other character. It's called acting. And so it seems like the objection is to just acting in general. And it's a particularly poignant objection. So that's some of the things that I thought about with this particular story, which I find very interesting. I want to read you a quote from actress Trace Lizette. "Not only do you play us and steal our narrative, is this the narrative you want stolen, that trans men engage in pimping and prostitution rings? And our opportunity can't really be stolen, it can only be taken. But pat yourselves on the back with trophies and accolades for mimicking what we have lived." There's actually a little truth there, which is Hollywood actors and actresses like to play, they're mostly straight because people are mostly straight, right? But they really like to take on these roles like being trans or being gay or something because it makes them feel good about themselves to like show that perspective. So they do pat themselves on the back. They do give themselves awards for playing somebody who's mentally disabled or playing somebody who's gay. Tom Hanks actually won an Oscar for playing a gay character. All of those things are true. What I think is a problem, though, is just objecting to an actor or an actress playing the right role. And lastly, I'll say, if you hired a trans man to play this role, it may not be the right role. Like if you hired a trans man to play Hilary Swank's role in Boys Don't Cry, that would not be a correct role. The big point is that you had somebody who wasn't like fully transitioned, essentially taking on a male role. So if this is a character who hasn't been taking years of androgenizing hormones, and you have a trans man play her who has taken years of androgenizing hormones, you're not really fulfilling the requirements of the role. And the last thing I'll say is that if the character is highly masculinized at this point, why can't a man play it? Because according to the trans agenda, if you have transitioned to the gender that you want to be, you are that gender. So if you are that gender, then that someone else of that same gender should be able to act out a role, should be able to play your part. And if it's a man who was born male, then that shouldn't matter because the character is male, right? The character is a man. And so there's a further unraveling of all the threads there, that it's like, no, it can't just be a man playing a man. It has to be a trans man playing a trans man. So you're creating a unique identity that kind of goes against the whole idea of changing genders from one to the other and wanting people to accept that. So it's an interesting couple of thoughts. Leave me your thoughts down below because I'm always interested in what you have to say about this particular like schizophrenic attack on Scarlett Johansson. And I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can visit me at dvspress.com, davidvstewart.com if you want to find my books and read those. They're out, and I always appreciate the attention. Or join my mailing list at dvspress.com/list, and I'll see you guys next time.